90% of the world's population will work for 40 years and retire with almost nothing to show for it. Not because they were lazy, not because they weren't smart, but because of something happening inside their minds, something nobody ever taught them to see. You've probably heard the statistic before. The top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. And your first reaction might be corruption, privilege, a rigged system, and you'd be partly right. But here's what almost nobody talks about, the part that actually lives inside you. Because the gap between the financially free and the financially stuck isn't just a gap in income, it's a gap in psychology. In this video, we're going inside for the most powerful psychological forces that keep ordinary people trapped in financial cycles they never chose, and that wealthy people, consciously or not, have learned to break. By the end, you're going to understand exactly why your financial situation looks the way it does right now. And more importantly, you're going to have a concrete framework to start changing it. This is a motivational content. This is a science of why wealth behaves the way it does, and why your brain has been working against you without your permission. Let's get into it. In 2013, a Princeton economist named Sendhil Mullainathan and a Harvard psychologist named Eldar Shaffer published a book that quietly changed how researchers think about poverty. It was called Scarcity: Why Having Too Little Means So Much. And their core finding was this: scarcity doesn't just describe your bank account. It rewires your brain. When your mind is consumed by a shortage of money, of time, of food, it triggers something they call a cognitive tax. Your mental bandwidth gets hijacked. Just like how a computer slows down when it's running too many background processes, your brain slows down when it's carrying the constant weight of financial anxiety. And here's where it gets cruel. Chronic financial stress triggers a sustained release of cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone. And cortisol, over time, does something specific and devastating to your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain responsible for long-term planning, impulse control, and decision-making. So here's the loop. You're under financial stress. That stress floods your brain with cortisol. Cortisol impairs your ability to make smart, long-term decisions. You make a poor financial decision. That decision worsens your financial situation. And then the stress gets worse, which means more cortisol, which means worse decisions. Round and round. Mullainathan and Shaffer found that people living in poverty actually scored lower on IQ tests when they were thinking about financial problems. Not because they were less intelligent, but because their cognitive bandwidth was consumed. The mental load of poverty costs mental performance. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist and author of Thinking, Fast and Slow, calls this the difference between System 1 and System 2 thinking. System 1 is fast, reactive, emotional. System 2 is slow, deliberate, rational. Wealth enables System 2 thinking. Scarcity forces you into System 1. So when someone says, why don't poor people just make better decisions? They're asking a question that ignores the fact that the capacity to make better decisions has been systematically eroded by the very conditions they're trying to escape. That's the scarcity loop. And the first step to breaking it isn't willpower. It's understanding that your brain has been running in survival mode, and that survival mode was never designed to build wealth. Let's talk about something nobody wants to hear. Your friends might be your financial ceiling. Now, before you get defensive, this isn't about cutting off people you love. This is about understanding a mechanism that is operating on you right now, whether you're aware of it or not. Here's the data. A landmark study by Harvard economist Raj Chetty, analyzing over 5 billion friendships using Facebook data, found that the single strongest predictor of economic mobility, of actually moving up the income ladder, wasn't education or your zip code or your natural talent. It was who you knew. Specifically, how many of your social connections were from a higher economic class than you. People with diverse social networks that included higher income individuals were dramatically more likely to increase their own income over time. But here's the mechanism most people miss. It's not just about knowing the right people for job opportunities, though that matters. It's about what economists call social norms transmission. Your social circle doesn't just affect your network. It shapes your normal. Think about this. If everyone around you drives a car with monthly payments, going into debt for a car feels normal. If everyone around you talks about money as something to spend rather than something to grow, spending feels normal. If nobody around you invests, investing feels risky and elite and not for people like us. Sociologist Robert Cialdini spent decades studying social proof, the psychological principle that we look to behavior of others to determine correct behavior. We do this automatically, below conscious thought, and your financial behaviors, your spending patterns, your saving habits, your relationship with risk, have been quietly shaped by the people you surrounded yourself with for years. This is why wealthy communities stay wealthy across generations, not just because of inheritance, but because of osmosis. The beliefs, habits, and conversations inside a wealthy social environment compound silently in every person within it. And the inverse is equally true. When your closest circle constantly discusses how hard life is, how the system is rigged, how money is hard to make and easy to lose, that becomes your operating reality. Not because they're wrong necessarily, but because repetition creates belief, and belief drives behavior, and behavior determines outcomes. The question isn't whether your environment is influencing you. It absolutely is. The question is that influence moving you forward or keeping you still? You know what compound interest is. You put money in, it earns a return. That return earns its own return. And over 20, 30, 40 years, the numbers become almost unbelievable. Most people understand that compound interest is one of the most powerful forces in personal finance. What almost nobody teaches you is that beliefs compound the same way. A small belief, planted in childhood, reinforced by environment, never examined, compounds silently over decades. Think about what happens when a 7-year-old hears their parents say, "We can't afford that. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are greedy." On its own, that's just a sentence. But that sentence gets filed away and then reinforced the next time money is scarce. And the next, and the next. By the time that child is 25 and standing in front of an investment opportunity, they don't consciously hear that sentence, but they feel it, a vague unease, a sense that wealth isn't really for people like them, a gut feeling that wanting more money is somehow wrong. Dr. Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist at Creighton University, has spent 2 decades studying what he calls money scripts, the unconscious beliefs about money that drive financial behavior. His research identifies 4 primary money scripts. Money avoidance, the belief that money is bad or corrupt, that you don't deserve it. Money worship, the belief that more money will solve everything. Money status, where self-worth equals net worth. And money vigilance, extreme secrecy and anxiety around finances. And here's what makes this so important. These scripts aren't just attitudes. They predict real, measurable financial outcomes, income level, net worth, financial behaviors, and even mental health. And they compound. If you believe deep down that money is stressful and complicated, and you're not good with it, every financial decision you make is filtered through that lens. You avoid looking at your bank account. You don't open investment accounts because they feel overwhelming. You spend impulsively because tomorrow feels financially hopeless anyway. Compounding. Now flip it, because here is where this gets genuinely exciting. Positive beliefs compound with exactly the same force. The belief that money is a tool and I can learn to use it, repeated and reinforced, starts changing decisions. Small ones at first. You open a savings account. You read one financial book. You start paying attention to your spending. You have one conversation with someone who earns more than you. Each of those actions returns a small belief dividend. I did something smart with money. I can do this. That belief fuels the next action, which returns a bigger dividend, which fuels a bigger action. Over 5 years, that looks interesting. Over 20 years, it looks like a completely different life. The compound effect of belief is the reason 2 people with identical incomes, identical backgrounds, and identical opportunities can end up in completely different financial positions 2 decades later. One believed wealth was for them. One didn't. So here's where everything changes. Because understanding a trap is only useful if you know how to walk out of it. And the truth is, the cycle can be broken. It's being broken by people every single day, in every economic background, in every country in the world. Here's a concrete, 3-step framework that synthesizes the research we've just covered into something you can actually use starting today. Step 1. Identify the core belief, not what you've been told to believe, not what sounds smart or rational. What do you feel when you think about having a lot of money? Because feelings are beliefs wearing emotional clothing. Some people feel guilty, like wealth is selfish. Some feel afraid, like having money means losing it, and the fall from having it would be worse than never having it all. Some feel like imposters, like financial success is something other people achieve, not people with their background, their history, their postcode. Here's a practical exercise. Finish this sentence without thinking about it. Money is blank. Whatever word came first, that is your core belief, not the word you wanted to say. The first one, write it down. If it was hard, your system is wired to make money acquisition feel hard. If it was stressful, your system is optimized to experience financial stress. If it was freedom, you're already operating from a different psychological foundation. Identify the belief first. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Step 2. Find the origin story. Every money script has a source. And here's the critical insight from Dr. Klantz's research. Money beliefs formed in childhood are rarely the result of deliberate teaching. They're the result of observation and emotional imprinting. You didn't decide to believe money was scary. You watched a parent panic over bills, and your nervous system logged. Money equals panic. You overheard adults say, "Who do you think we are? The Rockefellers," with contempt, and your brain filed. Wealth equal pretension equals not us. You experience a family financial crisis at a vulnerable age, and the emotional intensity of that moment created a belief that outlasted the event by decades. None of this makes your parents bad. They were running their own scripts from their own childhoods. But you now have something they may never have had: awareness. Ask yourself, when is my earliest memory of money? What was the emotion attached to it? That's the origin story. And naming the origin story does something psychologically powerful. It moves a belief from truth to context. It stops being, money is hard, and starts being, I learned as a child that money was hard because of specific circumstances in a specific time for specific people. That's a very different sentence, because one is a universal law, and one is a story, and stories can be rewritten. Step 3, replace with an evidence-based counter-narrative. This is not about positive affirmations. Saying, I am wealthy and abundant 50 times in a mirror while your bank account is at 14 pounds will not rewire your financial psychology. Here's what will. Evidence. Your brain is a belief prediction machine. It creates beliefs based on evidence it has collected. So to replace a belief, you need to provide new evidence. Here's how. First, find counterexamples in your own life. Has there ever been a time you handled money well, made a smart financial decision, avoided a bad one, saved anything, no matter how small? Write it down. Your brain has been selectively collecting evidence for the old belief for years. You need to consciously start collecting evidence for the new one. Second, expand your information environment. If you have never read a personal finance book, your beliefs about money are based entirely on cultural osmosis and emotional inheritance. One book, one podcast, one mentor, one community. These aren't just sources of information. They're sources of new evidence for a new belief. Third, take one micro action that contradicts the old script. If your belief is, I'm not the kind of person who invests, open an investment account. You don't have to put anything in it yet. Just open it, because your brain doesn't update on thought alone. It updates on experience. A thought says, maybe I could be someone who invests. An action says, I am someone who invests. That's the difference between hoping a belief changes and engineering it to change. The scarcity loop operates on autopilot. The social environment effect operates in the background. The belief compound effect builds silently for decades. But all three of those systems are interruptible. And you just learned exactly where the interrupt switches are. You cannot change your financial reality until you change the belief system running underneath it. Here's what I want you to do before you close this video. Not tomorrow, right now. In the comments below, write down one limiting belief about money that you're choosing to release today. Not a positive affirmation, not a goal. One belief you've been carrying that no longer serves you. I'm not good with money. People like me don't build wealth. Money always runs out. Whatever it is, write it down, because naming it publicly, even anonymously, is the first act of evidence collection for the new belief. It says, I see this thing, and I am choosing something different. Now, if you want to go deeper, we've put together a free wealth mindset starter kit that takes everything in this video and turns it into a working document for your specific situation. It includes a money script assessment, the belief origin exercise, and a 30-day evidence collection template. The link is in the description. It costs nothing, and if this video gave you even one useful insight, the starter kit will give you 10 more. If this kind of content is what you've been looking for, subscribe. Every week on this channel, we go into the psychology, the research, and the real mechanics of how wealth is built and lost, and how to consciously choose which side of that equation you're on. Next video, we're covering something equally important: why getting a raise doesn't make most people richer. The psychological phenomenon that causes most people to spend every single income increase they ever receive, and what to do instead. That video could save you hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars over your working lifetime. Don't miss it. The wealth gap begins in the mind, which means that's also where it ends. See you in the next video.